What's up, guys? You know, I've really wondered why companies haven't experimented more with really long pickleball handles. While I understand for most people it's probably not ideal, I do think there are a subset of people out there who would enjoy it a lot. I'm talking like 6.5 to 7 inches. Well, that all changes with Ouya because these handles are massive. So let's talk about it. The price of the Ouyas are $169.99, but with discount code PBStudio, you can save 10% at checkout. Ouya launched with 4 paddles, 2 models with 2 shapes. They have the Obsidian, which is a raw carbon fiber face, and then they have the Phantom, which is also carbon fiber, but has a spray-on grit texture. These are the same paddles, just with 2 different types of grit on the surface. Then they have the 2 shapes. The Max is the 17-inch extended shape with a 7-inch handle, while the regular Obsidian and Phantom are 16.5 inches in length with a 6.25-inch handle. The Max is going to be for people with huge hands who absolutely never want to put their finger on the back of the paddle for a two-handed backhand. It's also for people who want maximum reach. For most people, I think the standard shape is going to be more ideal though. The 6.25-inch handle still has plenty of space for a two-handed backhand, but you also gain a slightly wider head, which is a little bit better for resets and blocks. All models have a polymer core, 16mm thickness, 4.25-inch grip circumference, and are thermoformed with a foam-injected edge wall, and come with a 6-month warranty. First, we're going to talk about the raw carbon fiber Obsidian. But make sure you stay tuned for the Phantom because I was really surprised by the performance of it. For both shapes, I really don't notice a huge difference in performance. One gives you a slightly wider face, which is better for resets, while the other gives you maximum reach. But there wasn't a substantial difference in feel between the 2 paddles. The biggest difference I saw on paper was the twist weight. The Obsidian Max has a really low twist weight number at 4.74. This makes it the 4th lowest twist weight paddle I've ever tested, and in that list is a bunch of the Gearbox paddles, which, if you've hit one of those before, you know those have absolutely tiny sweet spots. If you aren't familiar with twist weight, it's a new metric a few of us reviewers have started to use, which helps indicate how stable a paddle might be. The lower the number is, often correlates with the sweet spot feeling small or the paddle not feeling stable. Currently, the numbers range from 4 all the way up to 8. Anything that's about 4 to 5.5 is a pretty subpar twist weight, and 6 through 7 is solid. Anything above 7 tends to be very, very stable. This is to say, when you hit a ball outside of the sweet spot towards the edges, the paddle isn't going to twist in your hand very much the higher the number is. While it's not a perfect correlation between stability and sweet spot, it is a really good indicator, and in the case of the Obsidian Max, it was spot on. Mishits were really jarring, and I noticed the ball being much more dead than what I'm used to with most paddles these days. So with a 4.74 twist weight, you can expect that you're probably going to have to add lead to this if you want it to hit optimal performance. Or you're just going to have to be someone who rarely misses the sweet spot. The standard Obsidian is a full point higher than the Max, coming in at 5.74. This one still doesn't feel as good as a lot of other paddles on the market right now, but it was noticeably better than the Max shape. So just know that with both Obsidian versions, you're sacrificing the sweet spot quite a bit. One of the most impressive aspects of the Obsidian is the very low swing weight. Both the Max and the Standard came in at 111, which is one of the lowest swing weights I have ever seen with a handle this long. For reference, the only other paddle that has a handle this long is the Pickleball Apes Proline Energy at 6.25 inches, and that paddle has a swing weight over 120. This is great because if you do feel like it needs lead tape, you have plenty of margin to add lead tape on the paddle without it getting out of hand. And if you do pick up an Obsidian, I would highly recommend that you add lead tape because I really don't think you reach full performance for this paddle until you add lead tape. I ended up adding 0.4 ounces to the throat and about 0.1 ounce to the head just to make it a little bit more powerful and distribute the weight in the head a little bit better. While this didn't get it quite to a place that I was fully happy with, I did think it was much more solid than it was stock. While I think they underperform in this low of a swing weight, for some of you, that might be a huge plus. Being this low with such a long handle allows you to be very fast and whippy with the paddle. While that's not quite my play style, I do acknowledge that there are people out there that may be beneficial for. For example, Zane's paddle is another one that's very similar to this, where it has a 6-inch handle and a 111 swing weight. Especially if you're good at hitting the center, you may not even notice the issues of the instability due to the low twist weight. When it came to spin, all the models hovered around the 1800 mark, which is pretty standard today, and that's to say you won't have any issues generating spin with any of the Oya paddles. For some reason, I've been having a hard time coming up with a way to describe how the Obsidians feel. It feels relatively stiff when the ball impacts, but it also doesn't have that pop or power that you expect from something that feels stiff like this paddle. I think a lot of this comes back to the lower swing weight. The nice thing about the Obsidian is that it comes low, which means you can customize it a lot. The downside is that due to this, I think you have to add weight to make it perform great. At best, I would call the Obsidian an all-court paddle. I might even say it leans slightly toward control. It just isn't as plush as some of those Gen 1 paddles on the market. So if you choose the Obsidian, just know that you're probably gonna have to customize it with lead tape. Now let's talk about the Phantom. A lot of my thoughts on the Obsidian have come from using the Phantom. Originally, I wrote the Phantom off because it was paint grit, and generally speaking, those don't tend to last very long. Well, the initial stats of the Phantom were pretty interesting because they were so different from the Obsidian. The swing weights on both shapes were 123, which is a big jump from the Obsidian. Immediately when playing with the Phantom, it felt much more solid than the Obsidian. The stock weights of the Phantom also come higher. Mine were about 8.5 ounces, but they do have an option on the website to choose a lighter model if you want that. The other noticeable difference is the twist weights were higher as well. The regular Phantom was 6.45 and the Phantom Max was 5.47. Both are a very nice upgrade from the Obsidian versions. Because of this, most of my playtesting ended up being done on the Phantoms. I found them very enjoyable even in their stock form. Interestingly, despite the high swing weight on paper, I still found this paddle very easy to swing. Not as easy as the Obsidian, but it didn't feel like the other paddles that I've swung in this swing weight range. I would describe the feel of the Phantoms very similar to the Obsidian, but just all around way more solid and stable. The Phantom definitely plays like an all-court paddle, and I think the additional power is coming from the higher swing weight and static weight compared to the Obsidian. The only thing that I'm concerned about with the Phantom is how long the grit will last. I'm always quite skeptical of painted grit textures because they have a history of not being that durable. I haven't noticed any degradation in spin on my Phantom, but the durability is definitely top of mind for me. So just be aware that with the Phantom, the grit is probably going to wear off sooner than the Obsidian. So where do these paddles excel? These paddles have a very niche and target audience. This is definitely for tennis players that are just coming into pickleball and utilize a two-handed backhand. The max shape is so close to a tennis racket handle length that I don't think you'd have any issues adjusting. Because of the extra long handle, these paddles are also very whippy. So rolls, flicks, and drives, you can really whip through the ball if that's something you enjoy doing. I don't think any of these models from Oya particularly excel in power, control, or spin, but they also aren't bad in any of those categories. The only thing I struggled with was resets on the max shape, and that's just because I'm not used to playing with a 17-inch length paddle. I'm sure with more time I could adapt. Otherwise, these paddles felt very easy to adjust to, and that's probably because they fall closer to that all-court style of paddle, so they aren't very polarizing or difficult to get used to compared to other thermoformed paddles on the market.
Two. Go, go, go. Oh, what? What? What do you want? You just had a clean overhead.
It was out of my range.
No, it wasn't.
Dude, it was right here. I'm so short.
So overall, these paddles aren't for everyone. However, I do think that the subset of people it is designed for will really appreciate it. The only paddle that mimics the Oyas at all is the new Pickleball Apes Proline Energy, which also has a 6.25 inch handle and a 17 inch length. My recommendation if you're choosing an Oya would be to pick the Phantom if you aren't going to let up the paddle. I just think the Phantom plays noticeably better than the Obsidian out of the box. If you don't mind tinkering with lead tape or you really want that low swing weight, then go ahead and get the Obsidian. Just know that it's going to take some work to get it to a really nice spot. I also believe that if you aren't concerned with having the longest handle possible and want the Obsidian, it might be wiser for you to consider the Pickleball Apes Proline Energy, as I find that paddle performs a bit better than the Obsidian. You don't have the 7-inch handle option that you do on the Oya, but the 6.25-inch handle that the Proline Energy offers is right in line with the regular Obsidian, and I think for most people that's going to allow them to put 2 hands on the paddle pretty easily. I never thought I would prefer a paint grip paddle over raw carbon, but in this specific case I really felt like the Phantom was easier to use, more fun, and a better performing paddle. I also think that unless you have massive hands or really want the absolute longest handle possible, the standard shape Obsidian and Phantom should be the default choice for most people watching this review. I really enjoyed playing with the standard Phantom. I just don't think it's one that I would personally take to a tournament, but that's because I don't need that much handle for my two-handed backhand. I would rather have the extra face for blocks and resets than the extra handle length. So if you're a former tennis player who really misses a long handle, this might be one of the best paddles that you could buy for yourself right now. Now, if you aren't someone who needs a long handle, go ahead and skip this paddle. It's certainly not for everyone, but I don't think it was ever intended to be either. While I don't think the Oyas are bringing any revolutionary technology or the hardest hitting paddles out there, I do think they fit a very specific niche that's going to make a group of people happy. If you've never considered using a paddle with this long of a handle, then you probably already know it's not for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.